packet, just so that you're aware. And there is information regarding the HUD area median incomes on our website, so that if you are not familiar with those, you can look at them there. Also, when the tenant and landlord are filling out the application in the Yardi system, it will tell them if they're within that median income once they enter their income information. Priority will be given to households whose incomes fall under the 50% median income, or for families, households whose unemployment have been unemployed for more than 90 days. So generally, when we're going through the applications, we're looking at those households, those applications first. We're able to pay up to $10,000 in arrearages, but also in prospective rents. As far as the arrearages, we'll pay 85% of the past 6 months in arrearages. For prospective rents, meaning rents going forward, if the tenant doesn't have any arrearages, or if they only have a few months worth of arrearages, we're also able to pay prospective rents. For those rents, the tenants will contribute, depending on their income, they'll contribute towards their rent. And the figures are here. So 0 to 30% of their income, they pay 0%, 30 to 41, they're going to pay 10%, 40 to 51 is 20%, and 51 to 80 would be 30%, and that's of the AMI. So my computer's telling me my connection is unstable. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. The landlord is expected to write off 15% of the past 6 months in arrearages, and that's they'll sign off on that when they're completing their part of the application. They're also expected to withdraw any legal proceedings prior to the application and waive any late fees or costs prior to the application. We're also able to pay a max of $1,500 towards electricity arrearages, and that's up to 6 months going backwards. And the payment goes directly to the utility company. Here's a list of the examples of documents that tenants and landlords will need to complete the application. Would be proof of identification, and that can be a state ID, a driver's license, passport, anything that has the person's name and a photo. Proof of income going back to 2 months. So if they're paid weekly, if they're working and paid weekly, it would be 8 paid subs. If they're paid bi-weekly, it would be 4. Again, going back to 2 months. If they're on unemployment, then it would just be the unemployment ledger. Just make sure that tenants understand that if they're uploading any of the financial information, it's got to show their name and the address, all of their information at the top of those pay stubs. A lot of the times we're seeing pay stubs and letters from either SSDI or unemployment, and they're showing us the figures, but not showing us the top part, which shows who this belongs to, who this document belongs to. We'll also need proof of past due rent. Generally, that would be a tenant ledger. A letter just stating this tenant owes, $5,000 in past due rent is not sufficient. There would have to be a breakdown of what's owed for what month, and then the total. And it doesn't have to be a formal ledger, it doesn't have to be anything on QuickBooks. It could be something in writing, but we do need it detailed month to month. Proof of the past due electricity bill, and that's simple. That's just a copy of the electric bill. Unfortunately, we cannot pay for gas bills. We can pay electricity. If it's not detailed in that electricity bill what months are past due, then we're going to need several bills to show the past due month to month for the past 6 months. And that's something they can probably pull right off of the utility company's website, or maybe they have a copy of the bills. Most likely they'll probably have to get it from the website. I don't think anyone saves bills that long anymore. The proof of COVID-19 financial hardship, and that can be a self-attestation, or if they have something from a doctor, they can upload that into the system. In terms of the landlord's side of the application, so how the Yardi portal is going to work, either the tenant or the landlord can initiate the application and then invite the other to complete the application. So they'll have to go in, register, they'll receive an email, and then they can complete the registration that way. So in terms of the landlord's information, we'll need property information. That's generally something from vision appraisal, just demonstrating the ownership of the property. The tenant information, so whatever information they have about the tenant, that could be a copy of the lease would be enough. Just detailing the tenant's name, who were the occupants, copy of identification, and that's the same thing for the tenant. It would be a state ID, a driver's license, passport, any photo ID with their name and photo on it. We will need a W-9 from the landlord because these are federal funds, and so at the end of the year, they will receive a 1099 for the income that has been received from us. And so we will need that W-9. We'll need a copy of the rental or lease agreement. Doesn't have to be a 20-page lease. You know, sometimes landlords just have a 1-page lease from Staples or something like that. That's fine. Again, the proof of ownership, and that's something that they can just pull off of vision appraisal, or if they have a copy of the deed, they can upload that. If they have like a mortgage statement, they can upload that as proof of ownership. And then a copy of the tenant statement of arrearages, and that would be the same thing. And just so that we're clear, the statement of arrearages does not have to be uploaded by both the tenant and the landlord. Either one can have that information uploaded. We do like to see when they're both uploading it, because sometimes the landlord will have different information from the tenant, and then we can kind of look and see what's going on there. But it can be uploaded by just one of the parties. Doesn't have to be done by both. But then again, that would be some type of a ledger that it details what months are in arrear and the amount for each of those months. Okay, so this is what you can find on our website. That list that I just showed you is on the website. The website, if you see here, can also be translated into Spanish by just clicking on the Español button. Sorry, the Spanish was coming out. And then here they can find the guidelines in the document matrix, and this pretty much gives them some detail of what documents are acceptable to submit. I would encourage you, if you're speaking to any of the tenants, to please have them go to the website and look at that matrix, because this will give them good information on what documents are acceptable. Uploading something that says, I don't have this document, is not sufficient. They're most likely going to have that application returned to them, especially if it's something like the ID or the income information or the rental information, the arrearage information. Let's see, the documentation checklist and screenshots of the tenant portal so that they're able to see what the application will look like before they go in to complete it. Also on our website, you'll find information on the HUD area median income levels for your town. And you'll also find the technology access support. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so to complete the application, we've subcontracted with Yardi, whose online portal we're using to complete the applications. They're online and accessible by smartphone and computer. The tenant and landlord both have to complete their section of the application in order for the application to be considered complete. And all documents must be uploaded, documents that are needed. The status of the process can be tracked by either party using the case number. So they can go in at any point, enter their case number, because at the end of the application, they'll be given a case number. Enter the case number and they'll see where their application is in the process. So for tenants who don't have access to Wi-Fi or computers at home, or who just need some help completing the applications, we have contracted with housing counseling agencies throughout the state. There's a list of those agencies on our website, and that map that I showed you earlier, if you hover on those dots, it'll give you the name and the address of the housing counseling agency. We have also contracted, we're also working with other community partners, and they're also listed in that technology access support map. We have a call center. This is the phone number here. That's the phone number is also on our website, so that tenants can call in and ask questions, maybe ask what housing counseling agency is near their town, things like that. This is our email address, and we do receive a lot of emails. They are responded to. I think now they're running about a day behind, which is really good when you have over 1,000 emails. We ask that if you're going to email about a specific question or issue about the application or Yardi, that they please attach a screenshot and the case number, so that we're able to help them. And then the UniteCT mobile technology bus, agencies can request the bus to visit their site for free. So you would go onto the website, fill out the questionnaire, and the date that you'd like the bus to be at your agency, and we can have the bus go there. It's got, I believe it's 10 laptops, although with social distancing protocols, I believe they're using about 4 to 5 at a time. And from what I'm hearing, it's taking about an hour for tenants to complete the application on the computer on the bus. Support outside of the application process, we're working with Connecticut Legal Services, the Connecticut Institute for Refugees and Immigrants, CIRI. They are working specifically with refugees and immigrants who are not able to provide the documents that are needed in order to apply directly through UniteCT. Their funding is state funding, where ours is federal, and so they have a little more leeway in what they require in terms of documentation. So if there are tenants who are refugees or immigrants and cannot provide documents such as the income documentation or some of the rental documentation or ID, CIRI is a good place to refer them to, because they can help. And they also have subcontracted with other agencies throughout the state. So there should be an agency close to just about everyone. Community social service partners who are working in the housing field are able to help with the application, as well as friends, family, churches, and other trusted persons in the applicant's life. A lot of the times what we're hearing is tenants are having a hard time completing the application or uploading documents. They're not technology savvy, and so anyone that can help them to complete the application is fine. So as long as there's someone that they can trust with the documentation. And this is our media presence. We have our portal on DOH UniteCT. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So make sure you like, share, and follow us on any of those social media websites. And then marketing materials are translated into Spanish and Portuguese. Community partners will support other language translations on a case-by-case basis. So if you have, I know some community partners who are doing like Haitian Creole. If you have a request for a translation into a different language, let us know and we'll try to accommodate that. And we're also engaging to work with minority newspapers, radio stations, and TV stations. And then I'll open it up to questions. And I'll stop sharing my screen, right?
Thank you so much, Jesse. And I really appreciate that overview. And I know we have some questions. So I'm gonna, if you have questions, you can use the raise your hand function. And I think I saw Tara raising a hand. So Terry, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I think a previous training, it was said that it's kind of like an automated system where like no caseworker really contacts the client landlord unless there's an issue with the application. Is that true?
That is true. So the tenant and the landlord will complete the application. They can complete it on their own or with help with someone or one of the housing counseling agencies. And for the most part, they'll be receiving emails if there are questions about any documentation. On occasion, they'll receive a phone call if there's, if we're not hearing back from them, or if the tenant emails back saying, I don't understand what you need, there might be a phone call involved then. But for the most part, we try to keep it all automated because right now we have over 9,000 applications. So it's hard to call everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before we go to other questions, I just wanted to call on our friends from DSS, Lynette, Cassie, and Carlene, who were here. When we spoke with them about this program after our first session, they had some concerns that they raised with Department of Housing. And so that's kind of how we got where we are today. So I don't know if any of you want to share some of the issues that were discussed around clients who are receiving other subsidies such as LIHEAP or living in Section 8 housing. I know those were some of the concerns that we all had as well.
So I think to that point, there were those questions, but I have a few from the presentation tied to slides 4, 9, and 10. So if we have time to cover it on the call, no one else has questions, that's, we can take my questions. If not, we can have it offline. But I think one of the questions, and I'm not sure if Dawn mentioned this to you, was really around LIHEAP. And the agencies attended a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and they were told that LIHEAP recipients would not be eligible for this program. So when the department reached out and spoke to Dawn, she said there is clearly a disconnect. That is not the case, because LIHEAP is not always electric. LIHEAP is a heating assistance program. And so when we had this discussion, part of this part 2 was really about drilling down and making sure that all of the participants from the CAs clearly understand the distinction between the two, and how the fact is that if indeed someone is a deliverable fuel household receiving SEEP and that they have a utility bill and there is an arrearage or something else, that they could apply for this type of assistance. And I think that's really what we want to make sure, that LIHEAP households or SEEP Connecticut's program, that these households are eligible for this program and are not denied access to this program. So if we could just unpack that a bit, that would be really great.
Sure. So my understanding is we can pay up to $1,500 of an electric bill in arrears up to 6 months. So an electric bill, whether it includes heat or just regular light or electric stove, it's whatever's under that electric bill we're able to pay, up to $1,500.
So that's what my understanding was initially. So when I heard this, I said, whoa, wait a minute. That is totally a different message than what I've been hearing. And so let me reach out to DOH and let's pull this all together to make sure the agencies are getting accurate information, because there were up to like maybe 8 people that heard the presentation and they all were saying, well, this is what I heard. So tied to the other piece, tied to what you just said, the other piece is tied to Section 8, if you will. So if indeed
Hold on, before we move on from LIHEAP, I'm sorry, I just want to jump in because I heard you say if a household has deliverable fuel and they're on LIHEAP, they can apply for this program. But I think it's important for us to know if all LIHEAP households can apply for this program.
Yes, that's exactly what she said. She broke it down again based upon, this is what the guidance is. It doesn't care what your heat type is or anything else. This is about utility assistance. Your arrearage is what it talked about, and those kinds of things. That's what the guidance was. And I think if you pull up that slide, people can see that reference, so it's clear for everybody.
But in Connecticut, it's for electricity. So
yes,
Right, so deliverable fuel
Nope, that's
is
different.
not part of,
No.
okay,
Well, deliverable fuel isn't the electricity. That's what started this
Right.
whole brouhaha for the network.
Mm,
Because the network was hearing nobody was eligible if indeed you received SEEP benefit or LIHEAP benefit. And so
Yeah.
that's when they started reaching out to DSS saying, hey, that is quite a few number of people that are not going to be able to benefit for this assistance. And we were saying from the DSS perspective, there is some confusion. This building is for level of utility and that assistance. And I think that's the Deb wanted to make sure, because I just used this low hanging fruit of deliverable fuel. And Deb was saying, wait a minute, I need to make sure people that are heating with electric also our agencies are aware that these people also are entitled to this benefit. That's why she wanted to make sure
yes,
we drill down. And so
That is very good to hear. So did everybody pick up on that? SEEP recipients are
Aye.
eligible for UniteCT. So that is very good news.
This is Lee Carenza from TVCCA. What I just want to add is that what we were told was that it would be double dipping if someone received LIHEAP benefits and then accessed UniteCT. So thank you for clarifying that that is not the case and we can move ahead.
Hi, this is Carleen Taylor. I'm calling from DSS also, and thank you for the clarification, Jasenia. And also echoing what Cassie has said, and also Deb, there was a concern regarding whether SEEP eligible households would be able to apply and receive this benefit through UniteCT. And I think Lee's also alluding a little towards the double dipping piece of it. And technically, LIHEAP or SEEP covers, consumption between November to May or now June. And the maximum benefit right now is only $725. Many of those households, even if they are electric heated households, especially if they're electric heated households, would have had arrears prior to that. And since you can go back and pay up to 6 months of arrears, when we had the discussion with, I forgot her name.
Dawn.
Dawn from DOH, when we explained how much the SEEP benefits were compared to what a tenant, could receive in terms of arrearages, assistance with their bill, she expressed that there was no concern and no probability of any double dipping. And I understand why the concern is, because they're federal funded dollars. So we have to make sure that they're not being paid twice. So there will probably have to be some tracking to ensure that doesn't happen. But our thought is that there should be no worry, because the SEEP benefit really covers a specific period, while the arrearages for electric, even if it's an electric heated household that has received SEEP benefits, it goes back 6 months. So could cover, bills prior to that.
Great. Thank you. That's excellent news. Cassie, you want to bring up Section 8 also, right?
So the other question was tied to Section 8 from the agencies. And so in theory, tied to the Section 8 requirements of what might be the tenant's responsibility for the utility bill or something else, agencies were told that if indeed a recipient is a client, is a recipient of Section 8, they are not eligible to benefit or to access this program. And so if you could just unpack that item, because when you looked at the information, it was looking at more of the AMI and Section 8 was silent. So could you let attendees know that if indeed a household is receiving Section 8, if they're eligible for this benefit?
right. And so Section 8, like UniteCT, is a federal program. And so the way that housing authorities addressed families who had trouble paying their rent because of COVID-19 was to do a recertification. So HUD is taking care of those tenants through that recertification. So they will not be eligible to receive rental payments from UniteCT. However, they are eligible to receive payments towards their electricity, their pass-through electricity bill.
So I think that was part of the disconnect also, that people weren't hearing, tied to exactly what you said. So because they're being recertified based upon their income, it's showing that reduction tied to that piece of it. But they
Exactly.
are eligible for the utility assistance tied to electric. The one
Right.
item that tied to the recertification, and let's say it goes back tied to the recertification for 6 months, and they still have an arrearage. If the recertification goes back only 6 months, but the pandemic happened in March 2020, can that arrearage be considered, or the recertification can go back all the way till the impact of the pandemic? So with the recertification, is there a time frame of where HUD is looking at the, or these housing authorities are looking at this recertification tied to arrearage?
I don't believe so, but that's something I can ask Dawn and get back to you all. My understanding is that Section 8 tenants will not be eligible for UniteCT because of that recertification. So if there was an income loss, they should have connected with their housing authority to make sure that they recertified their rent. But I can connect with Dawn and ask that question.
That would be helpful, because tied to the connection back of when that recertification window happens, that arrearage could still exist, because we've seen household recertification might go back only 3 months, but that other arrearage still does exist. So that would be the one thing tied to certification. I'm not sure if Donna Ditrio is on the call, but Donna, if I covered everything, great. But if I missed part of the other item, please speak up while we have the attention of UniteCT. I mean, we've gotten this opportunity and it's only half an hour left in it. So I want to make sure I covered your point that you talked to me about. So Donna, are you on?
I'm here, Cassie, and I think you covered the issues. Thank you very much for advocating.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm not sure if other people have questions, and if they don't, then I'll jump in with my other remaining questions, because I always have questions. So, but I'll wait for everybody else.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Raise your hand, everyone, if you have a question.
I don't have a question. I have, I guess, a comment. Hi, how are you, Deb?
Hi.
So Norwalk, I went to go visit Norwalk's site. Thank you, Norwalk, for allowing me to ask all these questions. I thought it was a great idea, because we're having the UniteCT bus come today to our site. So I kind of wanted to see how it worked and how they had it set up. So going to Norwalk, I was able to get some insight and some suggestions, some tips on how I would go about running my site. I was thinking that it's good to let people know, have those tips out there, so that they would have like tablets to help clients who are waiting in line if they don't have an email address already set up, so that it'll save some time on the van, that they don't have to set up an email address and waste more time, because they need an email address to apply. And also, I think it's important that we know that when they say proof of income, that they're asking for 2 months of income. Normal programs that we have only ask for a month, and they're requiring 2 months of income, which is something that should probably be added to your flyer, especially if people are doing these applications at home, that is just not a month, but 2 months of income that is needed. And I think that was, I'm still confused about the the utilities thing, but you guys say it's good. I was on that phone call that specifically said that they couldn't do it, but it's great to know that they can. So I'll make sure that I'll change my verbiage when I talk to the community, that they can still sign up, even though they may be receiving energy assistance, that they can still sign up for the utility assistance, which is good.
So Denise, I
That
think
was on that phone call that they said they were void, that they couldn't.
So when you mentioned the phone call where they said that the utility payments couldn't be paid if they had other assistance, what phone call was that? It was
with,
just so that I'm clear. It was not with Dawn.
Yes, it was. She was the one that said it.
It was with Dawn.
Yeah, and that's when we started talking about Section 8 right after that.
Yeah, that was the call that we had a few weeks ago with the Community Action Agency staff members.
So I mean, it's good to
That's
know
what
that
led
they
to all of the
can.
confusion.
We were like, hold up, wait a minute, because we do energy assistance as well. And, so that was, wait a minute. And then the conversation went on to Section 8. And so it's good to know that they can apply, but she did say it was double dipping and they couldn't. So, because I was telling her there was instances where people may not heat with electric, but may heat with gas, but they have a backed up light bill. Can they use it? So we were talking about that as well, but she did say it was double dipping, but it's good to know that they can, which is great. So that's why these meetings are great, so that we're all on the same page. But I suggest that if anyone's going to use the mobile vehicle, to kind of visit someone's site. I think that it'll make it easier. And I heard there was only 2 stations working. I think Norwalk just had 2 stations working on the van. Yeah, because of, I guess it was getting crowded, and just to serve that social distancing purpose, there was 2.
Okay.
But thank you so much, and I appreciate all
you.
your information.
Thank you, Denise. Good points to raise, because it is, 2 months is more than people are used to having to have at the ready. So good to tell people in advance so that they can have that available. Dana put a question in the chat box, which I'll read. It says, I have a landlord that is saying he has not received applications from his tenants, and he's wondering how to receive the application info if, for instance, the tenant does not put in the correct landlord contact information.
So he's probably going to have to start an application and invite the tenant in. Is he thinking the tenants apply and entered incorrect information for him? Because if that's the case, it would just be a matter of the tenant going back into her application and correcting that.
Dana, do you have that
Okay, yeah,
information?
Yeah, that's basically what it was. He feels like maybe because, tenants, maybe they may put like a typo or something like that, where that could be why some of them he's received and some of them he hasn't. But if they can go back in and just edit the information, then I can do that. Because we didn't know if they would have to basically, when they edit it, resubmit it again, or if it would just save the information new.
No,
So, but I'll tell them.
The tenant can always go into their portal, into their application, and make edits up until the time that things are verified by an auditor or a supervisor.
Okay, so is that when, because he was confused as well. He was saying that he didn't have anybody assigned on the application after it was already submitted. And I had remembered on a prior training that they had said you wouldn't necessarily have a caseworker assigned unless if something was wrong with the application, or maybe if they needed to get more paperwork or things like that. So that's why he was a little bit concerned.
Right.
But he ended up seeing that they had actually assigned a worker to that specific application.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that could mean that there was something else that they needed to add, or some more information that they needed to get. Stuff
So
like
if he saw that there was a caseworker assigned,
I'm talking about 2
application.
separate applications.
Okay, I was going to say,
Yeah, I'm talking
how
about
is it that
he's
not-
received. Yeah, no, he's had like 36 applications. He had told me that he had to do himself for clients because they were needing help with submitting the applications. So some of them he was receiving and then some of them he wasn't. So that's why I was saying that he was concerned about whether he could just go in and submit, if they can just go in and edit the contact information.
The tenants can edit
Even
the
if it's
contact
already been
information.
basically submitted. That's what I'm wondering.
But it wouldn't have been submitted by the tenant, yes. And the tenant can always go in and make edits. The only time they can't make edits, it's after the application has either been approved or denied. But those applications that don't have the landlord information wouldn't be approved or denied even at this point, because we don't have the landlord information. So the tenant can go back in and make those edits.
Okay, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Tara has a good question. Will it say approved or denied on the application?
It will, but it's going to take some time for that to happen. I mean, we really try to work with the tenant and the landlord to get to that yes. So you won't see any denies for a while unless, they're way over income or, anything like that. But Yeah, our goal is to get to the yes and to get the application approved, unless, there's absolutely no way that can happen. Most of the time, it's because we either don't get the documentation, and even then, we're working with the tenant and the landlords to get it for weeks and weeks, to get that uploaded. But like I said, if we have a tenant who's just way over income, then we can't approve the application. So it will say approved or denied.
So on a similar vein, we have a question from Tess in the chat box. Can you explain what happens once the tenant and landlord have completed their sections of the application?
So
They
once
just
they've
kind of
completed,
or like what happens?
they wait until we go in there, because we're going in order. And like I said earlier, we're going in with the highest priority cases. So it's people who are either been unemployed for 90 days or more, or who are at 50% or below of the AMI. So those are the applications we're processing first. That said, we're getting into the medium cases now. So we'll see more of those applications. But yeah, they'll wait for a little bit before they're assigned, but they can go into the portal. The tenant and the landlord can go into the portal to see where they're at in the process, and it'll say they're assigned to an auditor or not. If it hasn't been assigned, it's just because it's still waiting for it to be picked from we call them the buckets.
Gotcha. And Lee is saying that they had a customer who couldn't submit additional materials. The application was already listed as complete. So is there a way to add and upload more materials after the application is listed as complete?
Yeah, they're able to go in and make edits and upload. If they're having problems doing that they should email. And like I said, send us, attach a screenshot to what they're seeing as the problem, so that we can help them with that. But if the application is complete, I'm wondering why they were trying to upload more information. Did they get contacted by someone saying they needed something else?
The application was not complete. There wasn't all the information that was required.
Okay.
And so she was trying to put additional information in and wasn't able to. So is there a specific email address, or?
It's the email on the website that I showed you earlier. So he or she can go into the website and look at that email. It's the DOH-UniteCT. Give me 1 second, I'll look it up. So it's the DOH-UniteCT@ct.gov.
Super, thank you, Sanam.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
I have one more question, actually. It's Dana.
Hi, Dana. Sure.
Actually, it's like 2 questions. The first one is about the formatting of the application, because I was assisting a client with filling out the application for him. And I noticed when I went, it's a multi-generational household. So there's some members of the family that are like retired, that don't have any income. And then he has income, the main applicant, and the wife does not have any income because she's a stay-at-home mom. I'm wondering, when you go in, because I was confused about this, it asks if the person is unemployed, yes or no. And then afterwards, it asks for the date that they became unemployed. So I'm wondering what is expected of us to put in those situations where we have like someone that's retired that hasn't worked for years, or like a stay-at-home mom that has never worked. Like, what do you put there? Because it's kind of like strange, you know what I'm saying?
So
in the yes or no.
in the income section where they're asking the questions, there's a link for self-attestation of zero income. So if it's anyone over 18 living in the household who does not have income, then they need to click on that link, complete that, and submit that with their application.
Okay, so then do we put yes, they're unemployed, and then, because at the next section where it asks for the date, it doesn't let you really move along in the application until you put in that date. So should we just put no anyway, just so that we can continue? And then in the income section, put the attestation form?
So if they're unemployed, you have to answer no to whether or not they're employed. and then click on that link for the zero income attestation.
Mhm.
But I think
Okay.
the
'Cause
question
the
is like,
issue is just
what's
when it
the
comes to the
date?
date.
Yeah, so like if a
Yeah.
person hasn't been working, they haven't therefore filed for unemployment or anything, what's the date at which
Right.
they became unemployed if they are a stay-at-home mom with like a 5-year-old?
No, does it, I haven't seen that part of the application where it's asking for a date if you're unemployed.
Dana, is that
Yeah,
the
it's like on the
my
main section when you ask for information, like basic information of the household members.
Okay, I'm gonna look
If I
on my
remember
end.
correctly.
I'm gonna look at an application really quick. Give me 1 second. Okay, I gotta look at another case. Give me 1 second.
No problem. It's giving people time to
And
think
then
of
the only,
questions for you.
yeah, and then the only other question that I had was because I had spoken with a landlord about this application, and he didn't sound like he was informed about the 85% portion, where 85% of it will be of the arrearage would be given, and then 15% would be forgiven. So I'm just wondering if there's any kind of like literature or any kind of information that's given to these landlords so that they know, because he sounded like he wasn't aware.
It's one of the forms that they have to sign when they're doing their application. So let me look at
Oh,
the
okay.
income.
I think Dana's point is that it might be too late for a landlord who's already engaged into the process, as
Yeah.
the programs are shopping this around and talking to landlords about the benefit of it. It would be important to make sure they knew that before they did all of the paperwork, that by doing this, you're going to agree to a reduction in the amount of arrearages owed you. I think that's just what she's talking about, tied to the messaging.
Yeah, so we're going around doing different presentations, like this presentation we just did with you. We're doing it with different landlord associations throughout the state. And so that information is being presented. There's also information online if they go to the website that talks about that. But I will bring that information back and see if there's some other way that we can do some outreach around that. So the way that I'm seeing the application, the income side of things is it's asking for the household income. And then it says, if you don't have that information, please click here to download income attestation document. And that's the document that I'm saying that they can complete for zero income. Because they're check marks, at least from what I'm seeing on my end.
Are
So
you in the
it's
occupants
Yeah.
section? Eduardo was
it-
saying it's in the occupants section.
Yeah, it's in the.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Mhm.
You're in the income section right now, because what I had done was I had just made sure I went to the income section and I checked all the boxes that say does not apply, blah, 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 so that hopefully they can
Yeah.
get the connection that even though I put this over here, they have no income, and then just fill out the form. But it's in the occupant section where you like fill out the basic info of the people in the household.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the occupant section and I do see currently unemployed. Yes, and then it requires a date, and I guess that is required, but if it's someone who's been unemployed for a really long time, I would just say enter a date, going back to, if it's a mom who's never worked, maybe just go back to a date going back to 19 something, just so that you pick up
Okay, just put
something.
something in there.
But then, right, just so that you're able to move forward, but then make sure that the self-attestation for zero income for each occupant, each household member that's over 18 is completed and uploaded.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have questions? I know Cassie has a couple more and those might be
Yes.
beneficial for all of us, but go ahead, Miss Betty.
Only community action agencies providing the service?
I'm sorry, our only community action agencies?
Yeah.
No,
Are
this
there
is,
other
this
agencies?
is for, yes, this is for agencies throughout the state. This is for tenants and landlords are able to apply on their own. Yeah, so not just community action agencies.
Okay, all right.
But we know how important it is for all of you because to get involved with this program so that we can, I mean, you're talking to the people who need this program every single day. And
Oh,
there
for
is,
sure.
yeah. And there's,
Yeah, the more persons, agencies, community partners that we can get involved in helping with this, the better off we'll be in making sure that, you know, those households that really need the help get it.
yep. And Cassie, did you want to ask your last couple questions?
So if we could just pull up the PowerPoint presentation, and I just have questions about slides 4, 9, and 10. So slide 4 talked about the
Give me one
housing
second.
agencies that are assisting with this. Can you describe what that support is that those housing agencies are actually providing? Because it's really important that we not fall over each other or activities that someone else might already be doing or people might be engaged with already.
Oh, no worries about falling over each other. Like I said earlier, the more I'm pulling up the presentation to then share it. You said it was 4.
Yes, slide 4 was one of the first questions, because when I saw it, questions popped up in my head because about the partnerships that exist.
Oh, so you're talking about, well, 1,
I think it
2,
was slide 4.
3. That's slide 4.
Ooh.
This is 5.
No, the one about
You're
the housing
confusing me,
agencies that
Cassandra.
talked about technology access, and it was, oh crap.
So this here, the housing
maybe it's-
counseling agencies, community partners.
Maybe that's the slide.
Yep.
So who are those? I know it's there, but what work are they actually providing? Because if indeed they're providing the work and they're already connected to households that are already in, let's say, public housing, and the community action agency might be working with someone in public housing, maybe someone in these housing supports have already started that level of work with the customer. So I'm just wondering about what is that work that those housing counseling agencies are actually providing?
So the housing counseling agencies are going, those are the agencies that we've contracted with, right, to help. And what they're doing mostly is providing technology support. So they'll have computers or laptops in their offices that the tenants can access in order to, with Wi-Fi, right? That the tenants can access in order to complete their application. They may also help them with, you know, scanning documents and uploading them. So things like that, maybe answering a question or two. They don't get too deep into helping them, you know, they're not going to sit down with them necessarily and complete the application from beginning to end, but they will help. And that's the same for community partners. Those are not contracted partners, but it could be, you know, maybe they have a social worker that they go to and that person can help them providing a laptop with Wi-Fi or helping them scan documents and upload or respond to some questions on the application. So
Perfect.
don't
No, I'm
worry
good.
about falling all over yourselves. You're not.
No, because when you were
Because
talking about
generally-
tied to this,
Yeah,
no, when you were
'cause
talking about
generally
that
if
and you
you-
said tenants, that's what I'm listening to. So I'm
Yep.
saying, are those tenants in public housing associated with these housing counseling agencies, since you use the word tenants?
Right.
So
Yep.
that's yes. Okay,
No,
perfect.
so, right.
So, nope, good. So then
And
could you go
generally
to the-
what will happen is once, you know, a tenant goes into one agency to get help completing the application, they're going to stay there until the application's done, or they're going to come back there with whatever else is needed. They're not going to go to different agencies to finish different parts of the application for the most part.
Oh, you don't know people who
For
need
the
help
most
and how
part.
they shop around for the best package. So the next question was around CLS in Siri. I'm not sure. I thought it was slide 9, but not sure.
Let's look at, so Siri
Yes.
is for undocumented. You
Nope.
can see my
I
screen?
get that part. So
Okay.
if you could just pull up that slide for 1 sec, yes.
There it is.
So
Connecticut
tied
Legal
to-
Services. So
So,
sometimes.
right. So tied to my Connecticut Legal Services question, what is that activity that they're actually doing? Are they helping with mediation and eviction activities tied to that? Or are they helping with something else tied to the landlord? So if you could just drill down tied to what CLS is doing for UniteCT, that would really help the agency. So if indeed they have a client, let's say the landlord is like, I don't want to deal with you, I just want you gone.
Yeah,
And
then
we're going to
that's
continue with the
when,
eviction.
right, and that's when legal services will come in. Anything tied to the legal process, that's when legal services should be contacted. The client's in eviction, now the moratorium has been extended until May 20th. I don't know if it'll be extended further, but you still have some landlords who will try to at least intimidate the tenant and say, you know, we're gonna evict you and you need to be out in 5 days or whatever. And some of our tenants don't understand you know, housing regulations and rules. And so that's when Connecticut Legal Services will get involved.
So I
Or
think
should
that
get
would be really
involved.
good. Nope, I think that's a really good point for the agencies to understand that there's clearly a resource here for these households that are facing eviction, because sometimes that is considered a gap in service. Now tied to Siri, that's handling refugees. So if indeed, let's say that there is a refugee that may not be in Siri's catchment area, would they still make that phone call to Siri and Siri would outpost them and make that referral to somebody else?
Exactly.
Or should it be, okay.
Yep, exactly, because they have subcontractors in different areas of the state. So one of those will be able to help, you know, someone within living within the state, and that's for refugees and immigrants.
Yeah, so what's great about that, and I think Carlene will mention this later on if we didn't get to it, DSS actually manages the Connecticut Refugee Program. And so with that piece of it, and you were talking about this service, when there might be a need or something else, the partnership already exists tied to
Yes,
this item. So I wanted to
absolutely.
clarify what that role would be. And is it tied to the application assistance with the processing or more than just the application processing for the refugees? Because
So
it's
this
state
is-
dollars, I get that.
I'm glad I thought, you know, when you started with, I'm like, she's gonna get me in trouble with her questioning, but I'm glad you're asking this question because it reminded me to go a little bit further into this. So tenants who are either refugees and immigrants who were able to provide the documents required by the UniteCT program should apply directly to UniteCT. So they should get help from the housing counseling agencies to complete those applications if they're not able to do that themselves, if they don't have a computer at home or Wi-Fi or just need help, period. If they're able to provide, you know, income documentation, the landlord, the lease, an ID, those sorts of things. We ask for the social security number or the ITIN, but that's not required. So we can also service immigrants and refugees as long as they can provide the documentation. Where Siri comes into play are for those tenants who are having trouble providing those documents. They have a little more leeway because they receive state funding. Ours is federal funding, so we have to ask for those documents and we have to have them. Siri's funding is only $2,400 per household, per family, and $1,200 per individual, whereas UniteCT is $10,000. So it's always more beneficial if they are able to come up with those documents for them to go directly to the UniteCT application. But if not, then Siri can help them gain some funds. And they can help with that as long as they call that number and and they'll have agencies throughout the state that can help them. Did I answer your question? I know I went into my own explanation of it, but.
No, I think it was really important that you talked about the difference between the Siri piece with additional state funding that is outside of this pot, and that
Yes.
refugees, it appears, are eligible for this benefit as long as they can provide all of the required documentation. And the other item that you mentioned, although the application requires a social security number, it is not required, it's not a
required.
required element to
Mhm.
continue to process the application.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. And so my last question, then I saw that Donna put something in the box, was tied to the slide about the, one is tied to the lease. Is the lease required to be written, or can it be a verbal something? So, because we see verbal leases. And so is it month to month, or does it need to be a certain period of time?
So it's okay for them to have a verbal lease, but we need to have some document, right? That we have to have uploaded in the system. So even if they handwrite the terms of the lease, you know, who are the occupants, the dates that the lease is covering, the amount of rent, if it's covering any utilities, it could be a handwritten one pager, as long as it's signed. But we do need something to show this tenant lives here, this is what they pay every month, these are the landlords, these are the occupants. So we need that uploaded into the system.
So it doesn't need to be signed by
Thank you.
both parties since it's a verbal lease, and just the landlord needs to sign it, saying that I have a verbal lease with Cassandra Norfleet Johnson, these are the terms, blah, 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 and I'm signing it tied to the landlord.
It needs to be signed by both parties. And it
Okay.
can be month to month. It can be month to month. We're also seeing expired leases, and those are okay as well. There are a lot of landlords right now with this COVID-19 who don't want to renew leases just in case they have to, you know, evict tenants, and we're accepting expired leases as well.
And then my final question, and then I see Miss Betty has her hand up and was trying to say something, was really about your outreach to other communities and that level of communication. I think it was near the last slide. Tied to,
This here?
yes. So,
This here.
nope, yes, that slide tied to your media presence. Two different questions. How did you identify language for English, Spanish, and Portuguese? And then if indeed you can share with the department the minority newspapers, radio stations, and TV stations that you did the outreach to. So two different buckets. So as we're thinking about additional outreach and everything else, it's nice to make sure we're tying all of our messages together. But the other item is really around the outreach to these three specific languages. How did you make that determination? I mean, I know Judicial has that language out on their
So
website of these are the populations. Mhm.
I know I was not involved in that process. This was earlier on, so I'll have to ask, and I can ask Dawn to put together a list of the newspapers, radio stations, and TV stations for you.
Great.
So I'll write
And
that down.
then, so thank you for asking Dawn about the minority newspapers, radio stations, and TV stations. That's like perfect. The other piece is on a case-by-case basis. What specific community partners are you utilizing to do that translation service? So for example, in, let's say, the greater Stanford area, Haitian Creole might be one of the biggest things. So is it a specific community partner that you're working with that might be really helpful in the New Britain area? Polish is one of those languages that's really key for that group. And so when you're saying that community partners are doing that translation, is it that someone in the community action agency just shoots an email to you saying, hey, we're going to be doing some outreach at our Polish community center, and it would be wonderful if indeed we could have these documents in Polish? I mean,
So the housing, in terms of the housing counseling agencies, is that they have staff who speak those languages and can offer services to tenants who come in speaking those languages. I don't know if they have translated documents, although they might. I know that TVCCA is one of the ones that does the Haitian Creole. They do Spanish. NWNH, that's Mutual Housing Association South Central, that's in New Haven. They also do the Haitian Creole, Spanish, and French. So there's different agencies that have different capabilities for the different languages. And it's that they have staff who can help the tenants with those languages.
okay, so that was, I'm sorry, that was my misunderstanding of the sentence. So when it said community partners will support other language translations in a case-by-case basis, because it was above marketing materials, my brain said,
Yep.
"Eh, eh." it would be printed materials tied to that piece of it. So that was my
And if-
misunderstanding.
And it most likely probably is as well. It's just I have a list of what, I made myself a list of what agencies speak what languages just for things like this. And I know that those were two who did the Haitian Creole and Spanish and French. But there are
So-
also,
No,
Go ahead.
I'm good. Those are all my questions. So if you could just follow
Great.
up with Dawn about the last piece about the minority newspapers, radio stations, and TV stations, that would be great. But Miss Betty had her hand up, so.
Right,
I
and then we have a
defer to you.
question in the chat box after that.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, have you had instances of people going to several agencies to get assistance? For instance, someone might get some help through Siri and yet they, whatever they might end up trying to do something to UniteCT. Does that happen? Has that happened?
we have not seen it happen yet in terms of very specifically, because you mentioned Siri, there is a question, and this is kind of on the honor system, really. There's a question in our application that will say, or that's coming up as an enhancement on Yardi, that will say, have you received, services or funds for this program from Siri? And if the answer is yes, then obviously we can't move forward with them unless it's just for the electricity payment, because Siri doesn't do the electricity payment. They only do the back rent. So did that answer your question?
Yes, it does, because I know there have been instances of people talking about, well, if you go, you might be able to get more if you go to the different agencies. But it's mostly, some of them are coming out the same pot, so they can't really do it.
Right, right. And
Great.
and
So-
going to the different agencies in terms of the HCA's won't really help them receive any extra funds, because it's one application and it's through Yardi, even though it's all of those agencies that are helping with it. So the only other agency would be Siri that can provide funds.
Jesse, there's a question in the chat box. If a tenant is applying for utility assistance, do they need to only provide income, lease, and utility bill, and does the landlord still need to be involved?
So right now, the way that the application stands, the landlord does need to get involved. However, we are requesting a Yardi enhancement for that, so that tenants who are only needing to apply for electricity payments don't have to do all of that landlord application part of it.
Okay, so you'll
So
let us know.
that's gonna be
when-
about another week or so, yeah.
Okay. So for now, if you have a client who needs only utility assistance, the best thing might be to tell them to wait a week and then involvement at that time.
Deb, could I ask one more question?
Mhm.
So oftentimes at the end of completing an application with a tenant, they're interested in knowing how the process is going to proceed from there. We need to keep them informed. They want to know what to expect. So could you talk a little bit about, once a completed application is done and it's been approved, are they going to receive a notification? Is there any kind of an agreement that they sign? Are there protections that they receive from eviction as long as they continue to make ongoing payments? So just going on into a little bit of detail on the back end.
Okay, so when they complete their application, the application will be in our portal. And as soon as we get to their, as we're processing applications, we'll get to each application in the order that it was received, or by the priority statuses that we have. And so once we look at their application, they really won't receive any notification other than if we have documents missing, and when the application is approved and we need them to sign off on final documents for payment. But they can go into their website, if they can go into the Yardi portal at any point and just see where they are in the process for the application. And the application will say, in progress, or it's been assigned to this person as an auditor, or it's now ready for supervisor approval. So there'll be different stages to the application that will be updated so that the tenant can see where the application is in the process.
And then there is some type of an agreement that's signed between the landlord and tenant, or
Not between the landlord and tenant, as far as I understand that it's the agreement with us and the landlord that we're paying 85% of the arrearages, and they're gonna forgive 15%, that they're not going to pursue eviction proceedings that were filed before the application was made, and that they're not gonna, they're gonna waive the late fees or any other fees prior to when the application was made.
and the tenant also receives the notification that it's been approved and that payment is being made.
So it'll be in the portal, so she'll have to look at the portal. And then towards the end, they'll receive notification this payment is going out to the landlord. Yep.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Carlene, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just a couple quick questions, which I probably can find on the website, but since you're here to send me out, I'll just ask you. Is there an end date for people to apply for this assistance?
For this round of it, because I'm told there may be another round, we have to have everything committed, I believe it's by September, so all the applications have to be in by September. And then payments by December of this year.
Okay, so when you say applications have to be in by September, I guess September 30th. So no payments will be made prior until all the applications have
No,
been-
payments will be made as applications are approved. We've already had payments go out to landlords. It's just that's when all of the funds should be spent, is by December of this year for this round of funding.
And then when does the 6-month arrearage kick in? When it's approved, when the person applies, and do they provide the 6 months?
From the date of the application. Yeah.
So from the date of the application, so can it be any 6-month period prior to date of application that there is an arrearage? Or will you look at the arrearage and then?
If the application was submitted in March, that would go back to October in arrearages. Those are the 6 months.
The only reason why I asked the question is because there are people now applying for energy assistance, and the question was asked previously, if a person uses electric heat, say they only receive $545 from SEEP, but they have an arrearage beyond that amount. You're only going back 6 months.
And only up to $1,500. We can only pay up to $1,500.
No, yeah, I understand that, but how will you work out that process? If you're only going back 6 months and the seat benefit is $600, are you only going to pay $1,500 less $600, for example? Are you only going to pay $900 because the seat benefit covers a certain period of time within the last 6 months?
That response, I'm gonna have to get back to you on. I have to have.
Yeah, I think that's where some of the issues regarding double dipping, because we thought that, once the arrearage went back beyond, but if you're only going by definite 6 months, there may be an issue there.
It's definite this 6 months. We can only go back 6 months in arrearages, and up to $1,500, but I just have to see if there's that deduction because of the SEEP and.
Okay, thank you. If you can find out, because there may be an overlap there.
I'm curious, that arrearage, that's all new debt. That's not anything they've incurred or that they had that was pending that was rolled over.
What do you mean, rolled over?
In other words, there are people who have bills that they might have moved or something, and they moved in 6 months, and they owed from a previous residence, and the utility companies will add that to the, if they allow them
It'll
to.
still be, yeah, it'll still be on their bill as long as it's going
It
back
doesn't,
6
so it
months.
doesn't matter whether it's new or incurred.
No.
Okay.
Denise?
So it's got, remember,
sorry.
it's, so you changed, the question changed a little bit towards the end. It's past due, so no new.
Mhm.
We're not paying for current bills, we're paying for past due. Okay. And then I think this meeting was scheduled till
Yeah, it's
12 and I
only
have
until 12.
something
Let's
else.
take one last question.
Okay.
And Denise, you're it.
This is a real quick one. Sorry about that. So as far as advertising goes, so we plan on advertising our events in the newspaper. Marina was nice enough to send me a Canva platform where I could just put the date and the site and stuff. And we would like to attach maybe the flyer that states what they should bring with them. Do we have to ask permission to use that flyer in the newspaper, or do we have to
No.
tell you what paper we put it in?
Nope,
No.
you could use the flyer, their marketing materials on the website, you can use that.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
will, we have been recording this session, so we'll be sending it around. And Jesse, can you send me your slides as well? And then
Sure.
I'll send that around as well.
Actually, Dawn sent them to you in
Oh,
the email,
you're
but if you,
have them.
okay.
Yep,
Sounds good.
you're right. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great rest of the day.
You too. Bye-bye.